Hi, Shelby.
Hi.
Super excited to have this chat with you today. So it looks like you are in your office today, tuning in straight from RUMA. I feel like I see you on the road a lot. So tell me what
Just
you're doing.
for that, I came in for the good lighting.
Oh, it's podcast day. I like it.
I was gonna film it in my basement, but my 3-year-old would not comply with that. So
No, sure.
we're here, ready for
That
some
would
fun.
be
Thanks for having me.
No, totally. I'm totally excited to just have, honestly, like a off the cuff kind of chat with you about business, about how it's been for you growing your business as a mom, as a leader in our industry, how you think. I just want to tap into the brain of Shelby. So, for those who have been living under a rock and don't know much about you, why don't we start by just telling us about you and your mission at Bruma? Just let's start kind of high level.
Yeah, so I own RUMA Medical Aesthetics, and we started the practice about 6.5 years ago. And it's just grown immensely. We've been in 3 different locations, and now we're in Lehi, Utah. And our space is about 10,000 square feet, 8,600 usable. And we have full medical aesthetics and skin health and sexual wellness and full functional and regenerative medicine, which we can kind of get into. That's been the latest. It's actually been a couple of years now, officially having that side, and oh my gosh, the full wellness longevity piece has been just so beautiful, and such an incredible kind of batch of services to offer to our clients that's just been completely changing their lives and helping them not only look amazing but feel incredible so they can thrive in every other aspect of life. And that's a huge part of our mission. We have about 30 team members here, and we have the one single location, and we just actually signed on building our own building in Park City for a second location. So we are so excited. And I'm rushing over to our first construction meeting right after this. So that will be probably open in about a year from now.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all of the incredible growth. And it's interesting, the wellness, just touching on to that, right? I feel like that was kind of, COVID hit. People all of a sudden were like, oh, yeah, I need to take care of myself. I care about myself. I look like I got to reinvest in me. And you had the foresight to really and invest in bringing that in as part of the aesthetic business. You've grown to, been in 3 locations. I have had the good privilege of actually being at your just exquisite, beautiful Lehi, Utah location. I mean, you just really did go all in on that. I mean, even the toilet has a name.
I
It's
love that you're so stuck on the toilet, but it is, I mean, the toilet was necessary because we had really bougie clients in here from Texas, and well, in our old location before we moved over, and she's like, you got to make sure you have a bidet.
yeah,
And I was like, what? And so she showed me a couple of fancy toilets, and I was ruined from there. I mean, I
yeah,
had to get one in my house. His name was Pierre. He opens for you, closes for you. It's always warm and has
yeah.
lots of different fun settings. So it's a good time.
Love it. Now, when you started Ruma, did you have this big vision, or have you kind of surprised yourself along the way? Talk about how you decided to grow and, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I actually never planned on starting my own business. I watched my dad be an entrepreneur my whole life, and it's hard. You know, there's sacrifice and just grueling hours and so much stress and responsibility for other people, um, that really weighs on you over time. And just, I mean, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be highly educated, but I didn't really plan on starting my own business. It just kind of happened. I was working for a practice and realized that our core values were not in alignment. And 10 days later, I started RUMA. And I think when you kind of align yourself with your passion and things that really fulfill you, it just kind of propels you on this path. And the amount of growth that we've seen is pretty wild. But I think it's because we're helping our patients, feel incredible, and we're creating a safe space for them. And they share with their friends, they share with their friends. We build a team that has an incredible culture, and people want to work here, and it's just grown. So I've totally surprised myself with the growth, and I've tried to be intentional about the growth. I think we can kind of get into that too. A lot of people experience really quick success in our industry, and it's easy to want to try to grow too quickly. But I've tried to be really intentional and strategic about the growth, and even just the team and the space and the innovation and the services and the things that we're bringing in. I'm um, never first in line, but I'm always in the line for, all the newest things. But just being more cautious and observing and being really safe, research based, so it's just,
Yeah.
it's been a journey, but we're still in high growth phase right now.
Yeah, you are, but also I can attest to that. I know, like when we started working together, your goal was to sort of put the just take inventory of like building up the foundation and making sure that as you're scaling up, that structure is really strong to be able to expand. And I think that that's something that is valuable for someone in your position to share with other business owners who just see this fast growth and don't really lean into the reality that sustainable growth has to be intentional and has to be done, done in a certain way.
For sure.
Yeah. What was, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's a big reason why we brought you in. We've been working together for how long now?
9 months, maybe?
A while. Yeah. And I knew that we were finally at the point where we wanted to do a second location. Um, but I've seen so many practices just completely flail when they try to do this. And I've always tried to learn from other people. I mean, a wise man learns from his um, own mistakes, but a super wise man learns from the mistakes of others, right? So I tried to have a lot of mentors in my career, and especially as a business owner. And I knew we needed to dial in our systems and our processes and lock in our mission and our vision, because it evolves as you grow. Our mission, vision, values are different than they were day one, and that's okay, and you have to kind of learn to roll and pivot and make some changes. And I think what our business has evolved into, especially with your help, has been pretty beautiful the last 9 months. Our leaders are stronger. They have more autonomy, and they trust themselves more. And it's been really, really great.
Yeah, that's something that I've always been impressed with about you is when obviously I didn't know this about you until I got to know you personally, but you believe so much in growing leaders and empowering leaders within your organization. And that's something that I think is one of the hardest lessons for a business owner to realize that it isn't always about the 10-step process or what you see. It's about like how much you invest in leaving it, almost like spilling yourself into all of the other people that can grow and build your business for you. And you've done that beautifully. So kudos.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. And I mean, there's been a lot that's helped me. Kaeli has really helped me step back in clinic and work more on the business instead of in the business. And that's kind of tricky when you have a bank of 4,000 patients who only trust you, quote unquote. So really trying to instill um, that trust into the other providers that you've built and grown within your team, so you can have more time and freedom to do things that you want as a business owner, but also to be the CEO, be the medical director, be the innovator and the dreamer. So yeah, a couple of things that have really helped me with that is really kind of dialing in our patient base and kind of the 80-20 rule, and seeing the patients that are loyal, that are doing full face treatment plans, that are seeing multiple departments, and who have seen me for a while. And those people tend to be our top like 15-20% clients. And they're the ones that trust you and listen and kind of do the full plan. And so that's really helped, just being more strategic about patients that I've actually been seeing. But for, really helping our leaders grow, I love that book, Buy Back Your Time. I know we kind of talked about this, but something that I had a conversation with one of our leaders yesterday, where it's the kind of the 1-3-1 rule, because I think you can get so caught up in so many of the little kind of nitty gritty kind of issues, and your leaders will come to you with this like plate full of problem salad, right? Where you have like the salad and the meat and the vegetables and the potatoes, and there's just like all this crap, and you're like, okay, and they're venting, and it's okay, and they're just like bringing a. So I've kind of sat down and I'm like, hey, we need to start doing this 1-3-1 rule again, where you bring up a single problem, one that actually needs to be solved, because a lot of like the little things will kind of work themselves out, or already are, or you're giving them time. So I need you to bring, like, when things like this happen, you need you to bring that one major problem that actually needs to be solved, and I need you to come up with 3 realistic paths to overcome that problem. And then I want you to give me your single recommendation. And I'm telling you that most of the time I'm going to go with what you recommend. And I've had this conversation with my practice manager, and she's just been handling things like a boss lately, ever since probably like the last 6 months or so. But with our other leaders, our department leaders, this is important, and I've really given them the autonomy to help make decisions. And then they're getting a lot of confidence, because they're like, oh my gosh, I made this decision and came up with this recommended solution, and it's working, and this is amazing. And they're just kind of seeing the fruits of their labor and their decisions, and that's been really cool too. And that's something that you've helped me with as well. But I do think it's super, super smart to develop your team. I mean, one is too small a number for greatness, right? Like you can't do it all.
Yeah. At what point did you say, okay, now I need leaders to lead my people too? Like, when did you come to that decision in your business?
Probably a few years in, but honestly, I don't think I was ready to fully give them the autonomy to actually lead. They were still kind of a middleman to me. And I think in the last probably year and a half, I've really learned to give up a lot of control. Um,
Oof.
and that's something I've had to work on. But I don't know. I think my dad always told me as an entrepreneur, he's like, hey, Shelby, if you're going to do this, you're going to do everything 120%, because that's just who you are. But as you grow, as you scale, that's not sustainable. You won't have the life that you want to have if you try to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
So he always told me, the second someone can do something 80% as well as you, or with 80% of the passion, you let them do it, because 80% done by someone else is 100% amazing. If you're burnt out and not able to do any of it. So I would say the last, about 5 years into my business is the point where I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. I'm going to burn out. I need to start really trusting my team. And that's when we had some really big shifts. I brought in some stronger leaders. I was able to, feel comfortable with that financial risk of bringing in some really high quality people. Because in the beginning, you're scared to pay people
Yeah.
big salaries. At RUMA, we have a lot of performance-based compensation. So if, you win, I win, the business wins. It's like everyone wins, with all of, really kind of strict KPIs, quarterly bonuses, and really clear goals that we're all working towards. So that's worked out really well too.
Sounds like your dad's been a big influence in mentorship for you and growing your business.
Yeah.
Is he somebody you go to routinely for
Yeah.
advice?
Yeah. I think, yeah, for kind of like the high level business decisions, yeah, he's been a really great mentor. Not very familiar with our industry, but I think once you learn to run a business and you learn to run it well and build a team, you can kind of do that in any industry, right? Um, and I've kind of got that serial entrepreneur bug now, and I have 3 companies now, and we're starting another one. So I don't know what's wrong with me. It's just a constant.
Okay, we'll have to touch on that in a bit too. Okay, so a lot of really great success. What has been one or what's been the biggest lesson that you weren't prepared for in growing your business?
Oh man, I think in the beginning, I started this business as a medical provider, um, not as a business owner, and not as a leader. There's no school for that, at least no school that I went to. So, I honestly, it's more been learning about myself and really working on self development and um, along with developing the team. But I love Jim Rohn's quote where he says, "Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development because success is something that you attract by the person that you become." And I am definitely not the same person I was when I started RUMA. Um, and I'm proud of that. I've done so much, uh, so much work because I mean, you have to learn to not be reactive. You have to learn to give people grace. You have to learn patience. You have to learn how to discipline yourself, how to manage your time, how to prioritize. And I think, in the beginning, I was kind of not forced into it, but I felt like forced into it. Like this was my calling. I need to do this because nowhere I worked had the same core values as I did with safety and innovation and quality and culture, and it just didn't exist. So I'm
Hmm.
like, well, I got to create it. And readiness is not a state of circumstance, right? It's a state of mind. And I was ready, and I just dove straight in, and I've learned so much along the way. A couple of things I really wish that I did earlier was invest in a business coach and someone that could really help build the back end of the business. Um, as far as protecting the business, because I got into a couple of situations where um, the business was not protected, and that's a much bigger problem now with 30 people on my team. And I'm supporting 30 families, and I have a lot of responsibility to take care of my team. And so, legally, if things are not protected, that's a problem. So I would have navigated that and consulted with, attorneys and had a business coach probably earlier on. But I feel like that's just, I mean, part of it. I think some of my greatest failures are now some of my greatest lessons, and I can look back and honestly say that that has made my business so much stronger and me stronger as a person. Um, so now, anytime like something comes at me, and it feels like this just massive mountain, I just really try to take a step back and look at it like a hill. I'm like, not a mountain. It's just a hill, and we're just gonna roll over it, and it's gonna be fine. And it's funny, a lot of my team members that have been with me since day one, they're like, Shelby, you are so much better now at being less reactive. Like you handled that really well. Like we had all this retail expire because we had an issue with our inventory system, and thousands and thousands of dollars. And our team was like scared to tell me. And I'm like, guys, like it's fine. We'll just donate it. And everyone was shocked at how you just learn to, roll with things. And every time I'm like, it's a hill, it's a hill. It's not a
Yeah.
mountain. It's fine.
Well, because if you zoom out a bit, right, and you look back at even Shelby now to when Shelby, was ten days out from leaving an environment that she was misaligned with. And I've seen pictures of that room, right? It's a chair and my bare hands, right? And you look back at that and you can see that the problems didn't feel different for you then either. Those felt like big mountains, but you can look back and see that they really were all hills in the end. You make it through. And that's something I've admired about you too, Shelbs, that you like can zoom out and really make decisions from this version of how you see yourself in the future and how you see yourself building as a visionary leader into the future. And it just goes back to reinforce how much business is a mindset. I love what you said. If I'm going to quote you, readiness is a state of mind. I love that because so many people are like waiting for the right season or after the election or this circumstance or when this happens, then I'll do that. Yeah. And really, it just takes doing it. It's going in and then figuring it out. And that takes a huge level of risk and just confidence in your belief in yourself that you're going to be able to figure out the how along the way because you already jumped in, right? Like you're like,
yeah. And you really have to learn how to focus, because I think there's so much noise in our industry and it's like, oh, this, do this, be doing this and don't do this. And I think that for me, I've really had to just dial it in, and focus for me comes from recognizing and managing distractions, right? Where you're like, I don't need to give that my time and I don't need to give that my energy. There's.
Well, and as you grow, more people are pulling on you because they want a piece of you for themselves. Ultimately, I mean, that's how the world works. And there's so many directions you could go. And to think of even being somebody who has more opportunity and freedom to make those decisions, right? You're not strapped by like, this is all I can afford, or I'm not sure, but you have so many options available to you. I mean, how do you stay focused? How do you know what you need to be working on right now or where you should be spending your time?
Yeah. I have honestly, I mean, this, Kaeli and I have gotten very close this last year. But this has probably been one of the hardest years of my life. Definitely the hardest 6 months of my life, and have been through some serious hardships and trauma. And that kind of forces you to figure out what you really value and who you really are and what you really want. And I've had to take a step back and realize, I don't need to be a part of this like crazy rat race. I just need to figure out what brings Shelby happiness, because money does not bring you happiness. And I've really tried to live by the quote that says, forget work-life balance, do the thing that you want and create systems to support that. Perfectly imbalanced in the direction you want to go is perfectly acceptable. I don't think that balance exists. I think that it's more just trying to figure out what your priorities are and what you want to spend your time on. And honestly, I'm living like day to day with trying to figure out where I want to give my time and give my energy and who I'm surrounded with. You are who you surround yourself with. So I have been very careful about my circle the last 6 months. I've been careful about who I'm giving my time to, being more strategic, and really prioritizing my family and our team here, and just letting go of control. And for me, the last 6 months, I think I've sum it up by saying the saying of I've come to radical acceptance of where my life is right now. And it's tricky. I feel like, especially the election just happened, a lot of people are going through some really hard things right now. I don't know if you've noticed that, but
Yeah.
so many people are just going through it. And so creating a safe space at RUMA where people can really just come and feel free and peace, and we really help them feel better so they can take on life gosh, I don't know. That's just become a massive, massive priority for me, including my team members, and really creating a really nice, beautiful, just peaceful space for them. And I've been very protective of our space
Yeah.
lately. So gosh, I don't know. That's what I've been doing. I've just been trying to dial in, what means most, and really trying to take a step back from the craziness.
Yeah, I do feel that I just recorded an episode about navigating uncertainty of today with the future in mind. I think a lot of people make decisions about today, about what they think the future is going to hold, but we can't predict the future, right? So when you say, like, I'm taking it one day at a time, I think that that is like the ultimate example of letting go of the control of what this could mean for me, right? And just feeling the energy. And like one thing I'm hearing you say is that one thing I'm not losing sight of and I'm doubling down on is just the focus on my ecosystem and what's in my sphere of control, and keeping that connection with my patients at a level that they're not going to experience somewhere else. And I that is like music to my ears, because I do think, that's sort of why you started what you started. I think for many of us, right? We started our business because we felt like we could be an influence on somebody else in a different way. And that shouldn't change just because the world is moving at a faster pace around us. In fact, I think that's what, from my perspective, has made you so successful.
Yeah, I think that also, I mean, not just like my patients, but really doubling down on what's good, and being vulnerable. I think that vulnerability is one of the greatest strengths that a leader can have, especially a female leader. Develops emotional loyalty with your team, your circle, your patients, your people around you. When you're real, helps you connect, helps you get to the truth. And I've been very honest with my team about things that I've been going through, and it's just created a really beautiful space for them to feel like they can, seek support of our team. And it's just created a really, beautiful environment here. So that's kind of what I'm going to lead with moving forward.
I love that. You see a lot of practice owners coming through your training academy and obviously in just your circles. Where are some of the mistakes, or what's one of the biggest mistakes that you see business owners making as they're trying to grow and scale their business?
Oh, that's tricky. I think a lot of the time they have a really hard time with giving up control of certain tasks that they should not be doing. So
Mhm.
time management, I think, is probably one of the biggest issues. Again, you come into this as a medical provider, you start getting success, and you have no idea what you're doing on the business side. But then you feel like you have to do it because you're scared to hire someone on salary or pay someone, or like not have an assistant. Oh my gosh, the second I brought in an aesthetic assistant, I doubled my sales. And then I brought in a second one, and I'm like 2.5 times more efficient than I was before. But people just are scared to take those risks. So I think a lot of the time, especially as women, I don't know what our problem is. We just feel like we can do everything ourselves, and we don't have to. So I think being able to invest in mentors, invest in trainings and business coaches, people that can help kind of guide you, which is why I started my mentorship group. I have a mentorship group of over 40 business owners all across the country. And it's just created a really great safe space for these people to share. And we share our protocols with them, my wins, my losses. We've brought in incredible speakers to help with leadership and development, personal development, the legal side of things. Join a group like that, and let other people help guide you. You don't have to learn from your own mistakes. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that I see that I'm like, oh, just let it go. Bring someone in, get some help, learn from others.
No, I would agree too. I feel that on my end, right, as someone there's no limit to like what I've invested in my own personal development and growth. And so it's funny when people hold back on that. And I just feel like that's the key to unlocking success. And one thing you may not even know this about yourself, but you are a question asker. Like you will someone will ask you and then you'll be like, oh yeah, la la, but let me ask you because I'm really interested. You're very inquisitive and have a very
Oh,
curious mind. I don't know if you know that about
I'm,
yourself.
I know that. I'm the annoying
Okay.
person that I learn something and I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Okay, but why? And then they'll say, okay, but like break that down for me.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
which I mean, when I'm doing technique trainings alone within our training center, RUMA Academy, I encourage the trainees, like if I say something you don't fully understand, ask me the why behind it. Because if you're learning from someone and they can't break down the why, that's a problem. So you have to make sure that you're learning from people that truly understand the foundations of what they're teaching you. And yeah, it's so funny. You have to be inquisitive and yeah, it's just sad when I see these business owners trying to do everything themselves. You know, I think that everyone like seems so busy all the time. You're watching social media, people are going to all these places and doing all these things, and everyone just seems so busy and all the time. But I've learned to not mistake movement for productivity. You know, I mean, because you go, woo, you'll like I'll go shadow someone that I still constantly trying to learn. I'll go and reach out to someone that I think is incredible, produce results that are beautiful, or owns a really successful business, doing something I'm not, and I'll go shadow them. I'll just try to go hang out with them, and it's been really interesting when you kind of get a glimpse into someone's business. And I'm sure you've seen this many times, Kaeli, where you're like, gosh, I thought they were freaking killing it because they're all over the place and doing all these things, but they are not even being that productive. And so I think that's
Yeah.
something that you've helped too. Even coming within RUMA, I'm like, "Okay, girl, here's all of our weakest links. Like these are the things that I know we're struggling on, and I just haven't had the time and energy to put into it." And bring someone in like Kaeli who can help you just break it down and align it and give everyone direction and protocol. And I don't know. That's just been so helpful.
Well, I do agree. I think the busiest people, right? I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. It's because they're doing a lot of things that are not productive. That is the point. Like I can tell you just by looking at your calendar. Like if I ask you, what are your top three priorities? I know you could rattle them off. Most business owners, when I ask them that, it's the priority of today. It's not, my focus is growing my team. My focus is on visionary planning, and my focus is on, building my regenerative medicine division. Like those are all you need to be doing. Everything else. So look at your calendar, or all those things. Are you spending the majority of your time working on those activities? Most likely no. Or I'll ask, like, mentoring your team is your number one priority. Let's look at your calendar. How many hours this week do you have scheduled mentoring your team? Maybe one, usually zero, right? So
Yeah,
it's a lot of times a priority in our mind, but we're not actually acting upon that. So
yeah,
I want to talk to you about something I'm really interested in, just learning more about how your brain works in this way. You're definitely a clinical trailblazer, one of the first medical aesthetic practices to not only introduce wellness in our space, but also research and integrate regenerative medicine, which we kind of touched on, and the functional medicine side, and bringing all that together into this like holistic model. So I want to hear more about that. And I'm most interested in hearing about, what is being the first require of a market leader? Like, what's that resistance been like? What has that process been like for you? What are some of those things that, if I want to be someone who's, which you say you're not first, but a close second, then I'll give you that. Because I think you're
we'll
taking,
be first to do it well.
yes, yeah, you're taking, yeah, certainly. Okay, so talk about that. Like, let's talk about like how do you think through that process?
Okay. That's such an interesting question. What does it take? I think it takes a healthy taste for fear and risk and chaos. Um, because if you're bringing something in new, there's always risk involved. There's lots of research. There's education. Um, there's getting your team on board. Um, and I think this is something that honestly just lives inside certain people. And it's something you could probably learn. Um, but I've learned a lot about my childhood the last little bit, and early childhood adversity builds the muscle to handle the chaos of certain like startups or certain new like big shifts or new things that you're bringing in. So if you think about a lot of your friends who are really successful entrepreneurs, they've probably had a pretty chaotic childhood. I grew up with two other brothers who were heroin addicts and kind of a crazy home, in and out of like rehab and prison, jail. My parents were trying to keep them alive, and I became independent very quickly. And I wanted to make them proud. So I did all my homework myself, graduated with a 4.0, first one to get to college, first one to get any higher education, got a doctorate degree. But I think I've really had to dissect that and try to figure out like what in me is doing all of this. But I think that most entrepreneurs are addicted to chaos, and that was their normal as a childhood. So when things feel calm, it feels foreign to them, or when things kind of seem status quo within my practice, it makes me uncomfortable. Like I want something else. Like I want something new. I'm like, things are going really good right now. I think we should bring in this thing. I read about it, and I'm gonna fly to LA and go try it at this crazy Korean med spa because I think that it might be cool. I like that's literally what I'm doing this
We've
weekend. I'm
talked
flying
about
to
this. Like,
LA.
I think we sometimes create problems to solve them. You know,
Yeah. So
it's
hence
yeah,
addiction to the chaos for always looking for the next thing. And you also just have to be able to deal with a high level of uncertainty with a level head.
yeah.
And I think that's why I have a healthy taste for taking calculated risks. I'm not unsafe by any means. I typically am like the first one to try something on myself or my husband. Way more careful about demoing things before we bring it in and offer it to patients. Obviously, a lot of research, but I think honestly, that's what it stems from. That's the answer to your question. I think it's just uh, something that was driven into me throughout my childhood.
That's amazing. Yes, I would say like getting to know you, that's all of it. The calculated risks, you ask a lot of questions, you do your homework, and then you jump in the deep end and then
Yeah.
you make it work. Like you build the floaty, like you build the plane as you fly it. But you're in, you know that it's pointed in the right direction and that like if it goes down, there's a backup
Yeah.
plan kind of thing.
It's like
Like you,
it's
yeah,
like our jet. We have a vision jet,
yeah,
and it's like that thing goes, but worst case scenario, we just pull the parachute and it floats the whole
yeah,
plane down. You know,
right.
we always have a backup plan, but like we're taking a really big risk, um, and we're okay with it because we've done all the R&D to jump into it. You know.
I love that. So let's talk about, I'm curious how you see how you envision or your perspective of how your leadership style has evolved as you've scaled up the company through a team.
Hmm. Leadership.
You mentioned that your team notices that you're less reactive. So
Yeah.
that, one is one thing I've recognized in you is I see this as a hill, right? So like I see that, and then also just your willingness and desire to face things head on. That's something that's kind
Yeah.
of unique in the way that I know experience with women that I work with, where they kind of try to avoid the tough conversation as long and as much as possible versus going in. What
Mm,
about for you? What are some of those things for
yeah.
you?
You know, anytime something big happens, I feel like I have become much more mature and mature enough to control my own emotion. And if someone does something that's like insulting or rude or inappropriate, I always try to assume the positive and actually sit them down. And this happened last week. We had a situation. Sit them down and say, "Are you okay?" You know, I mean, really diving into that person and trying to figure out what's going on with them, because typically it's just a projection and a reflection of things that they're going through. And like I've told you, I have learned to give so much grace to others and myself, just because of things that I've gone through, and I've projected my anxiety and stress onto other people too. And so trying to be much more of a self-aware leader, I think that that has really, really been important to me. And I've evolved and I'm continuing. I mean, I'm nowhere near perfect. So, but very much so trying to be more self-aware and then aware of others and their situation. And then there's no situation that you can't navigate if you go about it by giving people grace and love and respect.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And I think a lot of people are scared to ask that question because then what do they have to do with it? Right? When you pull a team, one, you have to actually create the container of time and space to bring
Mm-hmm.
that employee in. And then you have to have that conversation with them. And then you have to be willing and prepared to take action, regardless of what that answer is, right? It seems like a simple formula, but it's much harder than I think most of us realize until we are faced with that situation.
Yeah,
Right.
it's so true. Yeah. And you have to be able to recognize your ability to handle that or not, um, as a leader. And sometimes you need to bring in someone else who can hold space for your team members and do that. Our practice manager is awesome. Sometimes it needs to come from me, but she can handle most of that now. But some people just like that's just not your thing, and that's fine. But you need to find someone that is a people person and that can hold space for your team. Otherwise, you don't have a culture. In our industry, when it's like female dominated, we brought my husband in and I was like, oh, this is a good idea for him to be the COO and kind of help run ops. And we realized quickly that no, like the team is predominantly women. He came from corporate America and finance, and let's just keep him in what he's really freaking good at. And that's the business side, the financials, all of that. And I will continue to run the people and the team and be the leader and the visionary and be able to hold space for people. And so sometimes it takes a minute to kind of figure out the people and put them in the right seat.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because a lot of I surveyed my community about questions that they wanted me to ask you. And by far and large, the number one question was about your team and how hiring best practices. So questions were, what's your hiring process? What are your interview questions? What does it take to build a team like a RUMA team?
Mm. Yeah, it's not the hiring process. That's for sure. That, you know, really helps dial it down to candidates that could be a good fit for your team. I think the question is more how to build an amazing team. Um, and I think that starts from the top. You have to be able to magnetize people by the person that you are, by having vision. And I shared my future vision with our team yesterday during our team meeting, and just wanted people to get excited and have a little bit of a glimpse into what's happening in my brain, and what I'm really moving and shaking for, and I think it got them really excited. If you want an incredible team, you have to be an incredible leader. And if you don't know how to do that, then you need to learn how to do that. Like I read at least a couple books a month at this point. I'm constantly trying to learn how I can lead these people better. And the interview process is important. I mean, make sure you ask why they think they'd be a good fit for your team, what they know about your company, have they done research, what's their ideal work environment, what their strengths are off the bat, so you know if you can help develop those. what their long-term goals are, what their personal core values are, so you can make sure they align with yours. We do personality assessments. We have them send us a video so we can see how they hold themselves, how they talk, how they communicate. Social media is a huge part of marketing in our industry. Are they comfortable behind a camera? And really trying to just make sure that they can fit within your team. We do like 30, 60, 90-day evaluations, because pretty quick you'll be able to tell if it doesn't align, and we've let many people go within that time period. I'm not super quick to fire, but I'm very quick to correct and do a one-on-one and give some very direct feedback. And if they can't take feedback, then they don't belong on our team.
Yeah.
In our one-on-ones at RUMA, we do monthly one-on-ones with every team member. Department leads run it, and we ask them for feedback for their team. Like, give us some feedback for your team, give us some feedback for your direct leader, and give us feedback for the ownership. Like, Shelby wants feedback. She needs feedback, and it's a requirement. Like, I need you to tell me how I can be a better leader, what else we can be doing for you, so we can help grow and evolve and move towards, what your long-term goals are as they're aligned with RUMA's. And so if they can't take feedback, that's a big problem. But that's actually created a really great culture, because as things come up, we're able to navigate, pivot, make, transitions. And, that's just a little insight into our hiring process. Did I miss anything, Kaeli? You know our hiring process really well.
No, but I think what's so important is the first, the question isn't what is your hiring process? The question isn't what questions do you ask? You just so eloquently reframed that to say, no, the question should be, how do I build an amazing team? Because that's really what people are trying to find out. And I think the number one lesson here for everybody listening, when they're trying to they ask, how does Shelby do it? Or how does somebody who, has built something that I aspire to build? We need to be listening to the questions that they're asking themselves. Like, what are the questions they're trying to get answers to? And the answer is, how do I build an amazing team? And the answer is, I magnetize an amazing team by being a great leader. And then all those are tactics under a great leadership. The not sacrificing. One of the biggest things is I'm not compromising on the fact that I need people in my team that can take direct feedback. And that's one thing that I think a lot of us are like, I don't know, I hope they can, but why aren't we not uncovering that in the process of onboarding and building like this, accountability based type of structure where we're getting feedback and we're building a culture of constant communication where we're going feedback both ways. Like, what can I do better? Here's what I need from you. Now tell me what you need from me. That's leadership. And guess what? If you're scared to talk to people, if you're scared of your own shadow, if you're scared of what people are going to say to you, if you're a people pleaser, that's where the personal development comes in. And that's where the coaching and the work that you put into reading your books and journaling. And by the way, I've watched you, like, you believe in taking time with your brain and not always just being busy, but making strategic decisions that you've thought through well and working to do the inner work to make yourself a better leader. So you covered it all for me. You answered that beautifully. And I'm just glad we went there, because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions that you're not going to go. I don't care if you have the best recruiter on the planet Earth of all time that can bring the best candidates in. If you can't lead them, they're not going to stay, and they're not going to build themselves in your company with passion. So
Yeah, that's funny. Dale Galloway says the growth and development of your people is the highest calling of a leader. You're not doing everything yourself. You're helping your people grow and develop in a way that they want to, and you're not forcing them to do anything that doesn't light them up. Figure out what they're passionate about and help them get there.
yeah, yes, I love that. Beautiful. Okay, so we're just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I want to hear about then let's talk about the next steps for RUMA and Shelby and how people can work with you. But a question came in, which I thought was really, I love and hate these questions because it just really makes you think. But if you could start over again knowing what you know now, what is the one piece of advice that you would give yourself? Like the future Shelby now, what would you say to like the past Shelby?
Hmm. I would, actually, the biggest thing that I would say is to trust yourself. Um, Trust your intuition, because that's such a powerful tool that we have. And I think that in the beginning, I tried to, look at what other people are doing and listen to other people and what they thought was best, and even like family and friends. And um, I think just trusting myself and knowing that I have the innate power to make my own decisions and to create what I want to create, I doubted myself a lot in the beginning. And I think that a lot of really successful people do, because we have imposter syndrome and we feel like we're never good enough.
Mhm.
And definitely one of those people. But I've really tried to turn that into my superpower and realize that, if you never feel like you're good enough, you're always trying to be better.
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of amazing because you're always learning and you're always evolving. And I think that's a superpower. Um,
Mhm.
so I've really tried to learn to trust myself. And I think to do that, like, you don't have all the answers, right? You need to gather information and try to learn from others, have mentors, um, but gather information and then, make your own decisions and go with it and trust yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know we've had in our little group too that, just conversations about sometimes you get to that point where you're looking around and you start to feel uninspired because you're like, for some reason I just don't see it being done the way that I feel like I want to see it. And you I think can question yourself like, well, what's wrong with me? But instead, if you trusted yourself and saw that as, no, this is my calling to go in source that and build it, build something that hasn't been built, that's that's really like what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing is you can listen to what you want and you don't have to do it the way that it's been done or what the way that other people tell you to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Biggest gift, like as our female intuition. So,
Yeah.
so
It's
let's,
pretty killer.
yeah, no, I love that. So, let's wrap up with talking about all your businesses and how a quick just, pitch on how women or men or how people can come and work with you and be a part of the RUMA and Shelby ecosystem.
Yes. I mean, we love men. I love men. We've hired
Yeah.
men, and I think there's definitely a place for men with what we do. So we can stay in our feminine, right? We need the masculine.
Uh-huh.
But business wise, we have obviously the medical practice. You guys can come and shadow. I always joke that we're a teaching hospital because we always have people in here shadowing. Our patients are so used to it. So we have our full practice, and then we have RUMA Academy, which is really evolved. We do obviously started out with just doing technique trainings, which we still do for beginner, intermediate, and advanced technique trainings, and we have a few different trainers within RUMA Academy, but we also have a practice management training now. We have an aesthetic assistant course where if you want to be more productive as an injector, hire an MA, send them over to RUMA. We'll completely train them for you and get them to be crazy efficient and really help you love your job more, also make more money, but have a little bit more peace with what you're doing throughout the day. You're not having to do everything yourself. We have we're developing with Kaeli a guest service training for our industry because I feel like that's a really missing piece to elevate that patient experience. So making sure that your guest service team is in complete alignment with your mission, your vision, your values, the efficiency, the quality, the culture, and that patient experience. And now we also have functional medicine trainings and actually developing something really incredible to help aesthetic practices bring in functional medicine, full functional medicine into their practices and be able to offer that to their patients by partnering with RUMA. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to us. Anything within RUMA Academy, email training@rumaacademy.com, and our training coordinator can send you all the information. We offer shadowing for functional medicine. If you're like, hey, is this something I would even be interested in doing, learning about the business side, the profitability of it, and all the incredible tests that we're doing on our full functional medicine side, which is, hormones, thyroid, adrenal function, gut health, peptide testing, genetic testing,
Oh,
all
I'm
sorts of, yes, all,
so needed.
it's so needed. And you can't just do like peptides and thyroid, guys, and hormones. You need, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We are doing everything, and really helping our patients fully optimize their health. So that's all within RUMA Academy. And then I have my Aesthetic Alliance business, which is my mentorship group. And that's actually starting over. We'll have probably 5 spots open starting in January. And so that will be another opportunity for business owners. And aside from that, you can always come and shadow within RUMA. We're always developing different types of trainings and ways that we can support people in our industry. And then I'm starting a whole nother business that we'll talk about that another day. That's going to beautifully align with what we're doing here, but in a completely different capacity. So, always have a little bit of chaos going, but I again, I'm just blaming it on my childhood.
The earthquake of Shelby. I love it. I'm like, what fault are we on today? But no, it's beautiful. But like, listen, like I love your zest for life. Like I believe like my mission here is to like squeeze every last bit of juice out of the lemon. And I think that is the gift that we have as like in this lifetime is what can we build? What can we create? How can we impact other people and encourage and inspire, empower them to live their best life. And I see you doing that on a daily basis. And even in the face of of tremendous adversity, so it's just been a pleasure working with you and getting to know you. And honestly, this has just been a really, I think, a valuable conversation for many reasons. We kind of went all over the place, but mostly to have just break down those barriers and have an authentic and vulnerable conversation about what it takes to build a successful and sustainable business as a powerhouse female. So thank you so much for joining me today. And we'll link up your training academy in the show notes. So if anybody wants to touch base on, if you want to check out the goods over there at RUMA and get a piece of Shelby yourself, go see what it's all about. So thanks so much, Shelby.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Kaeli, you've been such a blessing in my life. So thank you for all the help that you've provided.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.